Good morning.
Good morning.
It is with great humility and joy that I stand before you this morning. 5 years ago, when I walked into my rector's office at Trinity over in Ambler, I thought this day would never come. For many years, I had been wrestling with a call to the ordained ministry and could never hear an answer from the Spirit. Yet, one day in the quietness of Suwanee, Tennessee, the Spirit answered like a roaring lion, and my journey began. Now, if you aren't familiar with the discernment process, it's a long process that takes many, many years, 5 years in my case. But along the way, there are hurdles and obstacles, and each time one hurdle is completed, the next obstacle comes into view. Now, don't get me wrong. Each of the hurdles are definitely necessary because ordained ministry is not something to be entered into lightly and should be taken really seriously. Yet, after I had finished the race and I finally met with the bishop and was told I could begin seminary, I also remember his final words to me. Try not to lose sight of the real world while in seminary, because I can't guarantee that I will have a job for you when you're finished. Well, I'm glad to say that thanks to you, the people of St. Matthew's, not only am I employed, but I'm back in my home diocese at a phenomenal parish, and I'm doing a job that I am absolutely passionate about. So life is really good. But, now you may ask, we heard the reading from Genesis. What does what I just said have anything to do with Jacob? I never created an altar in Suwanee commemorating my epiphany. I've never seen a ladder with angels ascending and descending. But I was just like Jacob, and I'm sure many of you are as well. We all take journeys. We all begin journeys hoping that we're doing the right thing. And when I stepped out in faith and decided that it was time to actually look at ordained ministry, I did it knowing that no matter what I was called to do or where I was going to go, God would be present with me. That is the point of today's reading. God is always present. God was present with Jacob wherever he went. Right before this passage we heard today, Rachel, Jacob's mother, tells Jacob to flee the fury of his brother Esau because Jacob stole Esau's birthrights. So Jacob left and was on his way to Haran to live with his uncle Laban. Jacob left in a frightened hurry because Esau wanted to kill him. Imagine being told by your mother, you need to leave. But you don't just need to leave now, you need to leave right now because you're going to get in trouble. I mean, that's a difficult place to be. Jacob had swindled his father and his brother. Now, he isn't the most upright person in the Bible, yet God was still present with him, ensuring his safety during his pilgrimage. The Bible's filled with these type of passages. Earlier in Genesis, Isaac, Jacob's father, is kicked out of Gerar because he was too powerful. And once again, God appeared to him and offered consolation to Isaac, saying, "Don't be afraid, for I am with you." It doesn't matter what we do, the good, the bad, or the ugly. God is always present with us. Sometimes we don't necessarily recognize God's presence because God doesn't appear as we would expect him to appear. God appears through other people. A young man who I happen to know outside of Boston tells a story in Marked for Mission, Youth in Action about a time in his life. Seaver was 17. He had always been looking forward to being a camp counselor at the diocesan camp outside of Boston. He'd been going there since he was 9, and this was the year he had made it. He was 17, he could become a counselor. Everything was going great. He was a counselor until one night when he made a bad decision. The next morning, he was called into the office and fired. He was told that he needed to leave the camp by 2 o'clock that afternoon. He was devastated. The job he had always looked forward to was finished. He had let himself down, his family, and all his friends. He felt he had let them down. But now, a year later, he looks back on this, and he says that it was only the comments from his heroes that helped him make it through that tough time. Seaver says, "This event taught me that heroes don't make bad things go away. They just struggle through them with us. They don't live without fear, in it or out of it. They never try and put themselves above, below, in front, or behind us through their actions. They just go through life alongside us, with us, protecting us when necessary." Heroes? As I read this story, I immediately replaced the word heroes with God. Is that not what God does for us? Is that not what God showed Jacob in this morning's reading? God told Jacob, "I will be with you wherever you go." But what does it mean to say God is with us always? To me, the answer is love. God is love. And for me, the famous passage from 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects. Love never fails. As Christians and as Episcopalians, we use this passage at almost every wedding. Yet, how often do we really live out this type of love? Personally, I can say that I don't live up to this definition of love. I can't say that I'm always patient, because God knows I'm not. I can be envious. I boast. Have I told you that I was the deacon to the presiding bishop last week? But it's a love that's not easy to achieve. Luckily for us, we have a God that is all-encompassing of love. A God that is first and foremost a God of love. This past weekend, I had the privilege of attending the Episcopal Youth Event, EYE for short. This event takes place once every 3 years, somewhere in the country. This year, the Diocese of Pennsylvania was the host. So on Wednesday afternoon, I left Vacation Bible School here at St. Matt's and went to Villanova, where it was being held, to work as a member of the hospitality team. When I arrived, I witnessed God's love in action. Several small groups of dedicated volunteers spent all day Wednesday in 95-degree weather, sitting at the airport, at the train stations, and in the middle of a parking lot, greeting every participant as they arrived for EYE. They were there to welcome the stranger among us, to make Villanova a place of love. Luckily, the newcomers weren't strangers for long, because love of and for God exuded from their very being. Very quickly, strangers became friends. Stories about their travels were shared, and prayers were offered for each other. As the event went on, the youth heard from different speakers about how love can change the world, how we all can make a difference. I witnessed as the next generation of leaders and missioners of this church live out the passage from Corinthians. I witnessed just how, like God was present with Jacob on his pilgrimage, God was present with each and every one of those youth on their pilgrimage to our city. While the work was hard and the days were long, every night I went to bed seeing how the love of God can affect change in the world. Every night I thank God for giving me the opportunity to not only be working in a place where love wins, but in a church that understands the importance of being present with each other through the good times and the bad. I watched as friendships from previous youth events were rekindled, as well as the youth today tried to struggle with what it means to live in a nation as a young Christian adult. For at this youth event, I saw God present in the eyes and minds of all 1,100 of the people present. Saturday night, Michael Curry, the Bishop of North Carolina, offered the sermon. He spoke for 28 minutes. Who was timing it? Yet, it felt like 5. The kids were on their feet, cheering and clapping and screaming because they heard the message loud and clear. God is love, and each of us is called to go out and share that love with others. We are called to be like Jacob. We are called to continue on our journey and not stop only in those places where we feel the presence of God, but in those where we don't, because God will always be present. As I begin my ministry here at St. Matthew's, I'm going to challenge this congregation to understand and try and figure St. Augustine's idea of love. In the 4th century, he wrote, "What does love look like? It has the hands to help others. It has the feet to hasten the poor and needy. It has eyes to see misery and want. It has the ears to hear sighs and sorrows of men. That is what love is like." So, how are we called to love today? Amen.